My ex had a baby with my sister, and now they want me to be the godmother. The living room smelled like cinnamon and baby powder. Mom had lit one of her holiday candles, even though it was April, and the table was cluttered with plates of cookies, tiny tea sandwiches, and pastel paper napkins. Everyone was in their place, laughing, talking over one another like always, pretending nothing had ever happened. I was sitting on the couch, holding a baby in my arms. Sophie, 6 pounds, wide-eyed, wrapped in pink cotton like a fresh secret. She smelled like formula and something warm. Her tiny hand had curled around my finger, gripping it with surprising force, like she knew I needed something to anchor me. "Look at her," Mom beamed, arranging the baby shower decorations like this was a Hallmark movie and not a family reunion from hell. "Isn't she just perfect?" "She has Eric's eyes," someone said. "Lena's nose," someone else added. My stomach twisted. Eric stood across the room, pouring himself lemonade like we hadn't once signed divorce papers together. He glanced over at me, smiling like we were old friends. Like he didn't destroy me. Lena sat next to me on the couch, perfectly made up in that effortless way she'd always mastered. Her hand slid onto my shoulder. "Liv," she said gently, her voice soft with fake sincerity. "I want you to be her godmother." Silence. Like the room exhaled and waited. I stared at her, then at Eric, then back down at Sophie, a bundle of innocence wrapped in betrayal. And I smiled. Not a real smile. The kind you give at funerals. The kind that means you have no idea what you've just started. They thought I'd say yes, that I'd forgive, that I'd forget. They don't know who they're playing with. I used to think love looked like Vermont in October. 6 years ago, Eric and I drove upstate for our first anniversary. The trees were on fire with color, orange, red, gold, and we stayed in a little bed and breakfast with creaky floors and mismatched quilts. He brought me coffee in bed. We hiked until sunset. He kissed my forehead like I was made of something precious. That weekend felt like a promise, like we were building something that would last. I think about that now as I sit alone in the apartment we used to share. The walls still have the faint outline of the pictures we took down. There's a dent in the kitchen floor from where I dropped the pasta pot the night he told me he needed space. I never fixed it. It's my favorite scar. We met at a conference in Chicago. I was presenting a marketing pitch for a skincare brand. He was the IT guy helping with the projector, which glitched 3 minutes before I went on. He fixed it, I bought him a drink, and 2 years later, we were married in a garden ceremony where it rained but everyone pretended not to notice. Eric was charming in a quiet way. Not the life of the party, but the guy who remembered your favorite wine and poured it before you asked. He laughed at my dumb jokes. He folded laundry. He held my hand when we watched horror movies, even though he said they were silly. But even in the beginning, there were cracks. He didn't talk much about his past. He had friends, but they were mostly online. He loved his job but traveled often. Weekend trips to Seattle, Austin, sometimes even Vegas. He said they were conferences or urgent projects. I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to. We talked about having kids around year 3. I was ready. My career was stable, I was making more money than ever, and the thought of a little girl with Eric's eyes made my heart ache. But he said, "No, not yet. I'm not ready to be a dad," he said, brushing my hair behind my ear like that would soften the blow. "Let's wait a few years. Let's enjoy this time." So, I waited. I ignored the way his eyes glazed over when I mentioned preschools. I let the years pass while he took more trips, while I worked late and came home to an empty apartment and a cold bed. By year 5, I stopped waiting. There wasn't one big fight, no shouting, no slammed doors, just silence, cold dinners, long stares at the TV. I asked him if he loved me, and he said, "Of course I do," without looking up from his phone. I filed for divorce on a Tuesday. He didn't argue. He just nodded, signed the papers when they came, and moved out within a week. I thought the worst part was over. I was wrong. I was stirring my cappuccino when Sarah said it. Casual, like she was commenting on the weather. "Hey, weird question, but did you know Lena's pregnant?" I looked up. "What?" She blinked. I just saw her at the farmer's market. She's definitely showing, like 5 or 6 months along. That alone was a surprise. Lena hadn't said a word to me. We weren't estranged, not exactly, but we weren't close either. We'd always been opposites. She was loud where I was quiet, reckless where I was careful. Still, she was my sister. She didn't tell me, I said slowly, my spoon frozen midair. Sarah hesitated, chewing the inside of her cheek the way she always did when she was nervous. There's more. I wasn't going to say anything, but people are talking. They say it's Eric's. I laughed. It came out sharp and hollow. That's not funny, Sarah. She held up her hands. I'm serious, Liv. My cousin saw them together at the OB/GYN office last month. Holding hands. The words hit me like ice water. Eric and Lena. My ex-husband and my sister. No, that couldn't be real. That couldn't be my life. I have to go, I muttered, grabbing my coat, leaving half a muffin and most of my sanity on the table. I called Lena on the way home. She didn't pick up. I texted, "We need to talk. Now." She replied 15 minutes later, "Hey. Busy. Can we chat later? Everything okay?" A smiley face. I drove straight to our parents' house, the one with the white shutters and the hydrangeas Mom-baby talked to every morning. It still smelled like cinnamon and furniture polish and the ghost of a family I no longer recognized. Lena was there, sitting at the kitchen table, barefoot, radiant, pregnant. I stood in the doorway like a ghost. "So," I said, "it's true." She looked up, startled, but only for a second. "Olivia. Hey, I was going to tell you." "When?" Lena ran her hand over her belly, then looked down like the baby might whisper her an excuse. "I didn't mean for it to happen. Eric and I, we got close after the divorce. It wasn't during, I swear." I narrowed my eyes. "Don't lie to me, Lena. Just don't." Her lip trembled. It was confusing. He was hurting, I was there. One thing led to another. "One thing led to another?" I repeated, voice icy. "You slept with my husband." "Ex-husband," she snapped back, a little too fast. "And he's the father of my child now. I'm trying to move forward. That's convenient." We both turned as Mom entered the room, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Girls," she said, her voice gentle. "Too gentle, please. Let's not do this here." "You knew?" I asked, turning to her. "You knew, didn't you?" She looked down. Dad came in behind her, holding his crossword puzzle like a shield. "She's pregnant, Liv," he said quietly. "We didn't want to upset you. But this baby, this family, it's real now. We can't change what happened, but we can move forward." I stared at them, stunned. "You want me to move forward, like it's just a bump in the road? My sister slept with my husband, and I'm the one who needs to keep the peace?" "You're stronger than this," Mom said softly. "You've always been the strong one." That was the moment something in me snapped, not loudly, not violently, quietly, like a thread pulled too tight. I smiled. Cold, controlled. "I see," I said. "Thanks for the clarity." And I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just left them all standing in that perfect little kitchen, with their perfect little lies. The apartment was quiet, not peaceful, quiet. The kind that presses in around you like fog. The kind that makes your heartbeat feel too loud. I lit a candle. Lavender and cedar. I didn't need the scent. I needed the ritual. Something to do with my hands. The glass of wine was mostly full, untouched on the counter. My laptop blinked sleepily at me, open to a spreadsheet I had no intention of finishing. I sat on the couch, pulled the blanket over my legs, and stared at nothing. Then I picked up my phone. Lena's name was still there. So was Eric's. I stared at them for a long time. It felt surreal. Just weeks ago, they were still part of my life, in different orbits. Now those orbits had collided, and I was the casualty. I pressed down on Lena's name. Delete contact. "Are you sure?" I was. I did the same with Eric's. It didn't help as much as I wanted it to. Later that night, I walked through the neighborhood. I didn't bring headphones. I didn't want music. I wanted the sound of my own footsteps, the chill air, the feeling of moving, even if I didn't know where I was going. That's when the memories started to creep in, uninvited and merciless. Lena laughing at one of Eric's dry jokes, back when we were all having dinner at Mom's. Eric helping her open a stubborn jar lid, their fingers brushing. Me brushing it off. Of course they were friendly. Of course they got along. I didn't see it because I didn't want to see it. Because if I had, what would I have done? Back home, the first message arrived the next morning. Mom, lunch on Sunday? Lena will be there, but we can keep it light. It would mean a lot. 2 days later. Dad, your sister's doctor says the baby is strong. You should come visit. Don't hold on to grudges. Grudges? They thought this was about bitterness. They didn't understand that something had shattered, and not just my marriage. My sense of home had cracked open. The people I trusted the most had rewritten the story and cast me as the problem. So I rewrote my routine. I buried myself in work, took on extra projects, worked late. I signed up for yoga on Thursday nights, and a Saturday morning volunteer shift at the shelter near my place. The dogs didn't ask questions. They just wagged their tails. Some nights, I'd come home with aching legs and a warm sense of peace under the loneliness. That too felt unfamiliar. Not happiness. Not yet. But a kind of stillness. The kind that settles in after the storm passes, when the air smells like wet earth and everything is too quiet. I was alone. But I was also learning how to live with it. And that, I realized, was something they hadn't expected. They thought I would break, but I was building. The backyard smelled like grilled corn and charcoal. Laughter floated through the air, mixing with soft acoustic music playing from a speaker balanced on the porch railing. My father was flipping burgers in his favorite grill sergeant apron, while a few cousins tossed a frisbee on the lawn. To anyone walking by, it looked like the picture of a happy American family. And maybe it was, just not mine. I arrived 10 minutes late, on purpose. I needed the moment to collect myself in the car, powder my nose, adjust my smile, rehearse my lines. Keep it civil. You're here for them. You're stronger than this. Mom met me at the door with a quick hug and a plate of deviled eggs. Her eyes scanned me, assessing. I passed the test. You look lovely, sweetheart. Really? Inside, the house was warm and busy. Cousins, uncles, aunts, neighbors. Everyone chatting. Everyone pretending. Then I saw them. Lena stood under the big oak in the backyard. Baby Sophie cradled in her arms, her head bowed as she kissed the little girl's forehead. She looked radiant, glowing in a way that magazines always said women did after birth. Eric stood beside her, holding a lemonade and wearing a soft blue button-down shirt that I had bought for him once upon a time. When he noticed me, he smiled like we were old friends at a high school reunion. You look amazing, Olivia, he said, stepping toward me. I gave him a small smile. Thanks. That was it. Just thanks. He waited for more, maybe some warmth. I gave him silence. The baby stirred, and Lena bounced her gently. She's a great sleeper, she said brightly. Like her dad? She meant it as a casual comment. I heard it like a blade. I drifted between conversations, sipping wine, answering questions, laughing at jokes that didn't touch me. I was performing. I had to be. During dinner, everyone gathered around the long wooden table outside. Mom said grace. Dad made a toast to family, growth, and healing. I raised my glass and drank. Halfway through the meal, when the sun dipped low and the sky turned lavender, Lena stood up. She clinked her fork gently against her glass. I just want to say something, she began, smiling nervously. This year has been unexpected, but also beautiful. And through everything, there's one person who's shown more grace and strength than I ever deserved. She turned to me. Olivia. I know things haven't been easy, but I also know you have the biggest heart of anyone I know. That's why. Her eyes shimmered. We've decided we want you to be Sophie's godmother. Gasps and soft smiles passed around the table. My fork hovered mid-air. I felt every eye turn to me. The world slowed down. And I smiled. Not a fake smile. A different kind. The kind that said, I see you. I hear you. And I'm still standing. Of course, I said gently, lifting my glass. I'd be honored. Lena blinked, relief washing over her face. Eric exhaled, smiling proudly. The others clapped, murmured their approval. Only I knew. Only I heard the second part. I'll do it. And one day, you'll remember this moment and what came after. You'll remember it forever. The baby aisle was bathed in a soft fluorescent light. Rows of pastel-colored clothes, plush toys, and tiny shoes. A mother with a stroller passed by, her baby giggling in the seat. I could almost feel the weight of their innocence. I had no right to be here. I didn't want to be here. Yet here I was, standing in front of the shelves stacked with baptism outfits. Lena had asked me to help pick out something for Sophie. It's the little things, Olivia. You've always had such great taste. I have great taste, all right? I didn't trust myself to say no. I couldn't let her see the hatred simmering beneath my skin. Not yet. Look at this one, Lena said, holding up a delicate white dress with lace trim. What do you think? I glanced at it. Perfect. The dress for the perfect family. It's lovely, I replied, forcing the words through my clenched teeth. Lena smiled, not noticing my detachment. I knew you'd understand. You're such a good sister. The guilt came flooding in, but I pushed it down. She didn't deserve my sympathy, not anymore. The next few days felt like a blur of preparation. I found myself wrapped up in the meticulous details of the baptism. Invitations. Cake tasting. Organizing everything for the family gathering. But beneath it all, something darker was brewing. In the quiet of my apartment, I sat at my desk, scrolling through messages on my laptop. Lena had sent me some pictures of Sophie for the invitation, and I smiled politely in my reply. But then I found it, an old thread between Eric and me. He had no idea I was even looking. The conversation was from before the divorce, the last time we'd spoken as though everything was normal. And buried within the messages, I found it, the clue I'd been searching for. It was a simple line. A slip-up. Something about a weekend conference he'd mentioned to me that didn't match with the dates in the email he sent me months later. A conference I now realized had been with Lena, not some work seminar. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My pulse quickened. I was no longer just a jilted ex-wife. I was gathering ammunition. That night, I set up a Zoom call with my lawyer. The conversation was formal, but every word felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. You have the evidence, my lawyer said. Messages, receipts, photos, all of it points in one direction. If you want to make it public, you can. Legally, it's not defamation if it's true. Just make sure you stay factual. I could almost hear Lena's voice in my head. You'll understand, Olivia. You'll forgive us. We're family. No, I wouldn't. After the call, I sat in silence for a while. I had a choice to make. I could expose everything. I could make them pay for their betrayal, rip apart the image of their perfect little family. But as I sat there, something cold curled inside me. Instead of anger, I felt something worse, a calm resolve. The next day, Lena invited me to a cafe. She was holding Sophie in her arms, the little girl gazing up at me with innocent eyes. Thank you for everything, Olivia, Lena said, her voice soft and sincere. I knew you'd come through. You're a good person. You're going to be such a wonderful godmother. I smiled, that same smile I'd worn so many times in front of a mirror. The cold one. You're right. I understand. I understood more than she could ever know. The church was breathtaking. White ribbons and satin bows adorned every pew, and delicate flowers, arranged in elegant clusters, filled the air with a faint scent of roses. Candles flickered softly, casting a warm ethereal glow. The serenity of the place should have been calming, but it only made the chaos within me feel more intense. I had never imagined I'd be standing here, in this sacred space, witnessing the christening of a child who was supposed to be a symbol of new beginnings, one that I, of all people, would be a part of. The church was filled with familiar faces, family members, distant relatives, friends of Lena and Eric, all dressed in their best. Everyone seemed to smile, to act as if everything were perfect. as if I were simply here to honor this child and nothing else. But nothing felt perfect. I could hear the faint hum of conversation around me as people exchanged pleasantries. The soft rustle of silk dresses, the clink of glasses, the faint laughter echoing from the back. I stood quietly by the altar, trying to remain composed, a calm smile painted on my face, even though everything inside of me screamed to break down. Lena was sitting in the front row, her arms around Sophie, her smile radiant. Eric stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, looking at her with the adoration that always seemed so effortless for him to give. My eyes flickered between them. The image of a perfect family. But beneath that image, there was nothing but betrayal, lies, and shattered trust. I stood in my dress, a simple but elegant black number, my posture perfect, my makeup flawless. My heart, however, was not. The priest began the ceremony, his voice low and comforting. The words blurred together as I stood there, numb. I should have been focusing on the sacredness of the event, on this new life that was being welcomed into the world. But my thoughts were elsewhere. My mind kept returning to the past, to the deceit, to the truth that was hidden for so long. And then, it was my turn. The priest's voice echoed through the church. "Olivia, would you like to say a few words?" I stepped forward, my heels clicking softly on the stone floor. The room fell into a hush, every eye on me. The weight of their gazes was suffocating, but I had to say this. I couldn't let them get away with it. Not like this. I took a deep breath, looking out at the sea of faces in front of me, before my gaze settled on Lena and Eric. Their smiles faltered just for a moment, but that was all I needed. "I want to talk about what it means to be a family," I said, my voice steady but carrying a cold, controlled edge. "It's not about blood, it's about honesty, it's about loyalty, it's about respect." I paused, the silence around me thick and palpable. I felt the eyes of everyone in the room on me, waiting, unsure of what I was going to say next. "I was once the wife of Eric," I continued, my voice unwavering. "I loved him, and he betrayed me, with my sister." A sharp gasp rippled through the crowd. I heard a fork clatter to the ground. "But not after our marriage," I said, each word deliberate, each one heavier than the last. "Before. While we were still married." There it was. The truth. Out in the open. The silence that followed was deafening. No one moved. No one spoke. I could feel the tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. The faces of my family, my parents, my distant relatives, were frozen in shock. Lena, her eyes wide with disbelief, stared at me, her face draining of color. Eric looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I placed the small christening gift I'd bought on the table in front of me. The soft clink of the package against the surface broke the silence, though nothing could pierce the weight of what I'd just said. "This little girl is innocent," I said, my voice quieter now, but still sharp. "But you," I looked directly at Eric and Lena, "are not. I'm not obligated to remain silent for your comfort." And with that, I turned on my heel and walked out of the church. Behind me, there was nothing but silence. No one followed, no one spoke. Just the stillness, the absence of sound. The moment felt like a lifetime, and I left it all behind. The salty breeze brushed against my face as I sat on the warm sands of a secluded beach in California, the waves gently lapping at the shore. The sun was beginning its descent into the horizon, casting a golden hue across the sky. I had always dreamed of finding peace in a place like this. And now, I finally had it. 6 months had passed since the day I walked out of that church. 6 months since the truth came pouring out, shattering everything in its path. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And now, as I sat here, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders with every passing second. I wasn't the same person I was back then. I had rediscovered myself, piece by piece. I had thrown myself into my work, into travel, into the little things that brought me joy. I had started a blog, sharing my experiences with the world, and the feedback had been incredible. People were listening. People understood. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. I took a deep breath, reaching into my bag to pull out a letter I had just received. It was from Lena. The handwriting was familiar, and as I unfolded the paper, the words seemed to jump off the page with an almost desperate energy. You ruined everything, but I still hope you'll understand. The words stung. They always did, no matter how many times I read them. It didn't matter though. She would never understand. None of them would. And that was okay. The truth wasn't about their comfort. It was about mine. I sat back, the letter resting on my lap, and I began to write. I had no intention of sending it. This was just for me, a reminder of how far I had come. Dear me, I never thought I'd find myself here, but here I am, at peace. I don't need their validation, their forgiveness. I don't need to carry the weight of their mistakes anymore. I'm free. I've learned that freedom isn't about escaping the past, it's about accepting it, owning it, and moving forward. I am not the person I was before. I am stronger, braver, and more honest. I didn't destroy anyone. I simply stopped playing the role they expected me to. I stopped being a part of their lies. And that was enough. I closed the letter, my fingers lingering on the paper for a moment. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing I had done the right thing, even if it had been hard. Even if it meant losing everything I once thought mattered. I stood up, the wind ruffling my hair as I walked toward the water. The sound of the waves was a soothing reminder that life moved on, no matter how messy or complicated it got. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was just free. And that, for the first time in a long time, felt like enough. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped being part of someone else's lie. I didn't seek revenge. I showed them who I really am. And that was enough for them to lose everything.